Hi, welcome to this series of tutorials for modelling our game assets for our port. So obviously we're now moving on from the blocking out stage, which was to give us a sense of scale and the look and feel of the port, and now we're going to actually go in and model our detailed game assets that we can eventually put into a game engine and animate as well. So starting off, we're going to look at starting from the beginning, starting with simple models, and then we're going to build up to more complicated models. So we're just going to go through again, refresh our memories of what models we created. Now your model of your dock or your blocking out of your dock may be slightly different. You might have gone for a slightly different direction, but all of these techniques will kind of be applied throughout the range of tutorials, and we're really building on modeling skills rather than actually specific items. Okay, so just to go through, we have our full dock here. We have our floodlights, which are above the office, and they're on the back walls of the dock. We have cars. Again, we're looking at the full area, which we can go back to and actually scan the whole area. We have the platform itself of the dock, the actual base, which has areas of kind of coastline exposed, which are leading up to the front of the rock. We have our simplest model, which is our traffic cone. We have our crane, oil tankers and fencing, petrol tankers even, in fact. Again, simple model. We have our sort of life ring that are around the circumference of the edge of the dock there. Our storage tankers, our kind of shipping tankers. Shipping containers even, sorry. Back to the floodlight, which we also have on our crane, floodlights on struts and our office block. Trucks, and more vehicles, petrol pumps, the base of the petrol pump here. Again, we have our rock face with the floodlights on there again. Our guy just for scale here. Barriers and road signs. Again, the fencing. Again, going back to the road signs now in more detail. That's the floodlights on sticks, and we have our smaller crane as well. And back to the shipping containers, our other office, our sort of warehouse area. And if we go back to our kind of full area, we also have little things like the mooring points. We have our lift up to the top car park. We have our wind farms. I think that kind of covers most of the areas. What we'll be doing in the first lesson, we'll actually be covering something very simple, which we're going to be covering the traffic cone. Now, what you might want to do now is jump over to the other tutorials. This is listed in the extra tutorials, and it will cover how to actually start researching these areas. The best way to 3D model is using image planes. As you can see here, I've brought some orthographic images of cars, and really the best way to do is to actually do a quick search for orthographic images. Like I say, you can jump over to our extra tutorial, which is researching images for modelling, and that's just in our extra section, and it will just cover easy ways to search, can be more specific than I'm going to go into in this. And this is just really an example of an orthographic image, which you would use Photoshop to cut up and then bring in on as image planes to sort of get the form of the asset you're creating from all angles, and that's essentially what the orthographic images are for. Later on, once you're an experienced modeler, you can start to model things maybe from not from memory so much, but from actually an understanding of the shape of that from many different ranges of researched images. So like I said, we're going to be looking at traffic cone. So we can find different images of different types of traffic cone, and again, which traffic cone you decide to go for is going to be your choice. They are quite varied. There's kind of like the single molded section, the ones that come in two parts. Our model in our blocking out is just a very basic model, just to kind of show roughly what a traffic cone looks like. Again, we now need to make decisions about exactly which traffic cone we're going to model. ideally we want to find as many of these as possible and then kind of narrow them down to which one we want. So this one's quite nice with the reflective strip, with some kind of texture on there as well, and it's again in 2 parts, and you can see these details. We've got these smaller details within our traffic cone which can be added as normal maps or bump maps at a later date rather than actually modelling in lots of detail. We have our simpler traffic cone, which again has a kind of textured cover. We also have some kind of stamp with the make and model on there as well, and I think this is the type we're really going to go for as our main traffic cone. So I've had a look at orthographic images for traffic cones, and you can see we're not really bringing any orthographic images up. That can be a problem for certain assets you may want to model. We could look under traffic cone, modeling reference, and again we're getting sort of some ideas of how people put these things together, but we're not getting any orthographic images. So in this case it might be better to actually start thinking about creating your own orthographic images, which is talked about in the other section about actually researching models. So I think for this what we need to find is actually some dimensions of traffic cones. So we're going to have a look at a basic traffic cone and see if we can find some dimensions of the traffic cones. And there's a few bits of information around, but not necessarily for the type of traffic cone we want. But we're really going to use this just as a guide. As long as we're reasonably accurate, we can work out kind of ourselves how things should be. So if we just take this as a guide, in this image here we have, see if we can actually look at a better image. So this one is 750 millimeters high by 400 millimeters wide, 400 millimeters wide. So obviously we can convert this into, and there's actually 2 different sides here, sizes. So 75 centimeters by 40 centimeters each way. So we can easily block out something like this manually by going into Maya, which we need to make sure we are checking our settings. So go into our settings and we are in centimeters. We could change it to millimeters if we want, but centimeters should be fine. It's an easily convertible scale. Click save, and we create our first cube even, and we do a width of 40 by, not in height, sorry, 40 by, not 240. Should do 10 centimeters in height, and that's our kind of base. I don't even think they are 10 centimeters. We'll probably want to change this to something like 5. Okay, and we could just bring in a quick blocked out version with a height of 75. And we can just change our radius as we see fit. We can pull this up. What we actually want to do is probably snap the pivot point to the base here, so we can just pull it straight up to the grid. What we'll do is we're going to isolate our cone first. So isolate selected. We see in our viewport here we have isolate selected. Hold down D on the keyboard. In fact, we'll do insert on the keyboard. Hold down V, and then we'll just snap it to somewhere at the base there. And then we should be able to hold down X, snap to the grid. We're not quite on the grid there. Just isolate selected in a different viewport. We shall hold down X again and just snap that to the grid. Okay, we can turn off isolate selected now, and we can see roughly our shape. We might want to adjust the radius. Again, if we go into real detail, we can probably find a radius section. We can see that does go quite to the edges here on this particular one. And what we probably would have been better doing is actually creating a different shape, because we've got kind of a bit of a conical shape here. We probably would have been better creating a different shape for this. So say something like our cylinder here. So let's just get rid of this. Again, this is again going back to a blocking out stage really. So we'll create a cylinder, isolate that cylinder, and give it a height again of 75, specific radius. Just turn the subdivisional caps off on this for now, because we only really need one at the moment, and we'll be changing our subdivisional axes later as well if we needed to. Okay, so again, hold down either D and then hold down V, and you can snap that pivot point, and then just pop into the side view, and then hold down X, and we just snap it to our grid. It's really important that we make sure whenever we're modelling our assets that we're snapping to the grid. Let's bring our central section back, and then we'll just change the radius of this again, and we're going to go for something similar. We can then change our top radius by just selecting the vertices and kind of bringing this in. And now we have a blocked out to scale cone at the moment. Again, this isn't modelled based around orthographic images, it's just blocking it out kind of manually. So really when we were covering the blocking out stage, we were actually trying to model as much as possible to scale, but now is a time to really make sure we're refining that. So to look at actually modeling from orthographic images, what I'd like you to do is skip over into one of our extra tutorials, which is creating orthographic images. In that we go through actually creating orthographic images of a traffic cone, just the form really, nothing in detail, just so we can actually bring it in and kind of model it. Yeah, again, probably for something like a traffic cone, this is a good method, but the extra tutorial will kind of just give you a guide on how to create orthographic images from scratch.